Because of a lot of buffs in the 21.0 update, I tried Spillway CHIMPS, but I wanted to do it cheaper than it's ever been done before, and due to the PoD and Etienne buffs, I was able to get it cheaper than the current cheapest strat, which was with Carrier, Flagship, and Tax Zone for about $83,000. This setup cost $79,300. I skipped past the early game in this video because it's just a lot of retrying and basically garbage with drone swarm timing and buying some towers, and I wasn't really sure. And the early game definitely isn't completely optimized, but the late game is cheaper than the other setup, and so it still wins out by about $4,000. So basically my late game strategy is going to have Prince of Darkness, Etienne, a 202 Discount Village, a Shattering Shells, and a First Strike. So the First Strike is there for mostly for 98 and 100, as well as some other random rounds like 87 and stuff. It can deal with 0 MGs, which PoD isn't that great against, and it can also do some cleanup. And so, especially on Spillway, where you have this big circular section in the middle, the First Strike Splash is very useful. It's almost like a Ground Zero, but it also has the added benefit of working good against round 100. I'm also going to get a Mob Glue, and I'm going to open that wall on the right hand side so that the Mob Glue can see in, and so that the PoD can cast its waff on the inside. And the Wall of Fire that he casts is going to do some serious damage actually because of the 21.0 Graveyard buff, which allows his main attack to do +1 damage for every 200 zombies in the graveyard, which can go up to +10 damage. And as far as DDTs go, this is only possible because Etienne's level 20 now damages DDTs. So on round 99, it's like just barely possible, and I'm using a combination of the Mob Glue Slow to clump them together, the Prince of Darkness zombies, obviously, some Wall of Fire RNG, and the UCAV. All of that combined together is just barely enough damage to beat a fortified DDT. So like PoD, as you probably already know, is really good against round 95, but against round 99, you need a lot of help. On some maps, you can accomplish this just by getting a Balloon Sabotage, but if you already needed one for 95, which you might on really short maps, then you might need to just get another DDT damager. And as far as like general DPS, Etienne is one of the best heroes for that, because you can just put him down and kind of like, you don't have to buff him in any way other than jungle drums. Even overclock, like it only buffs the drones, so it's not super important. But thanks to the buffs to his drones, he's very not useless in early game anymore. And also the buff to the UCAV made him a good support DPS for DDTs, as well as like a lot of mid-game rounds, because for instance you can use the UCAV at the end of 75 and carry it over into 76, which is really helpful in some setups. Not in this one because we have PoD, and PoD's just going to beat everything, but if you were using him with like Dark Knight or something, which is the sort of meta strategy on Muddy Puddles for saving up a lot of money now, if you're doing that, then the UCAV is really useful there. I also have a Berserker Brew for PoD because what that does is it gives extra pierce to the main attack and the Wall of Fire, and it also increases the zombie spawn rate, and for being about $2,000, it's definitely worth it. Sometimes you can get stronger stimulant for PoD, but I don't think it's strictly necessary. I think if you're trying to save on money, Berserker Brew is enough. So this is round 95, which PoD is really good against. It only took me 2 tries to beat this round, and it was basically down to some like RNG stuff. Just like I think the first zombie didn't spawn in a good spot, but like, you know, it's it's definitely really doable, and I don't even have Mob Glue here. If I had bought it, then it would have made this round a lot easier, but I just kind of was playing it by ear. I didn't know what I was going to buy. The hardest round ended up being 98, kind of by far, so I had to get Shattering Shells, Mob Glue, etc. Well, I got the Mob Glue on 96. I really wanted to avoid getting Shattering Shells, but there was nothing cheaper that I could find that allowed me to beat 98. So this setup definitely can be improved. First thing I would say is you can probably cut some upgrades on the Ninja early game. Like, you could probably get it down to a 201 instead of 301. Maybe even 202. That would be cheaper than 301. Like getting Caltrops. That might help enough for early game. You might also be able to cut bigger blasts on the mortar. I had to get that to be around 30, but maybe if you have some good micro and a lot of patience, you can cut that as well. Everything else here I think is basically like you can't get rid of it at all. Like, I don't even have crosspath on the Berserker Brew. Another thing that's maybe a possible angle is to do your discounting a bit early. So the only things I didn't discount were the Mortar and the 100 upgrade for that, the Wizard and the upgrades up to Necromancer. I did discount the Wall of Fire. I also did not discount Etienne, just like placing him down, obviously, because I wanted him early. And yeah, that's about it. Everything else I think is basically mandatory. Maybe you could cut primary training, and maybe the Mob Glue would still work well enough, but I kind of doubt it because round 99 was really close, and so was 98, and I think if you had any less gluing, then it would all fall apart. So overall, maybe you could cut around like $2,000 from this setup. Anything more would require a completely new strategy. So what I'm doing on 97 here is I'm going to use the level 20 UCAV at a very specific time so that I can carry it over into 98. I don't actually need the UCAV to beat this round, but I do need to have enough cooldown going into 99. And so if I used it at the start of round 98, that would be too much cooldown. Like, I wouldn't have it up by the start of 99 because I actually tried doing that and I died, obviously. So just to show you how hard 98 is, I included one of my failed attempts at it. The strategy that I am using for this round is to use Shattering Shells, micro it to defortify everything, of course. And then I have to time the first strike here so that it will blow up a bunch of mobs and do cleanup. So first strike has a 350 damage splash, which can hit basically everything in the center section. And so that's obviously very good for like cleaning up a giant wave of mobs. One thing to note is that the zombies can't re-hit the children of something that they already hit. So sometimes like the mobs will just pass through zombies and nothing will happen, and the reason that that happens is probably because the BFB already killed their parent when it was going around before. So one thing that was very useful here is that with the Mauler Mob skin, you can see a sort of like rocket trail underneath the zombies. It's that blue light thing that you see, and that's really useful because the zombies kind of block your vision, and you can't put small balloons on them or anything. So knowing when there's a bunch of mobs going around is really useful because that tells me when I need to do the first strike. It's when I see a bunch of blue light thingies. And so that ends up being like around now. And then you just have to pray that you're a wall of fire and basically all the stars will align and that you can clean up everything. And round 99, as long as you have the cooldown, it's pretty easy. Like, it took me like 3 tries or something just to get the exact timing right and to get some wall of fire RNG. So I got some good zombie spawns there. Maybe this will be it. Okay, not this one. So the DDTs have 1104 health, and the zombies each do. Technically, the BFBs do 110 damage now. They do 100, but it's plus 10 because of the graveyard stacking buff. That does affect the zombies, and so those like normal balloons that it spawns, they actually are like, at base they do 2 damage, but they're doing 12. So, it can add up to be a lot more than it looks like. So on a map like Spillway, actually PoD is doing a surprising amount of damage to the bad because of all those regular balloons that just spawn and hit the bad. It's actually more DPS than the big blimp things. So what happened there is I actually did too much damage to the bad, and I popped it before my second first strike ability came up. So this time, what I'm changing is that I'm not going to use the UCAV ability during the round, and I'm just going to let the drones and the pod zombies and stuff deal enough damage. So that's that. That's the cheapest Spillway chimps ever. And Pod got 1.2 million pops.